Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Rapid Results with Andrew Weiss. We have a very special guest today, Megan Huber. And in case you don't know who this Megan person is, she is a powerhouse in coaching and online education. She has a decade of experience in high school education and a master's as well. She transitioned to consulting, significantly boosting client retention and referrals for numerous businesses, including helping a seven-figure company transition to eight figures within 4 years. She's the co-creator of the Invisible Marketing Method, and she empowers rapidly growing companies to scale by transforming clients into enthusiastic advocates. Megan, welcome to the show. Tell us what's the biggest and best business deal you're most proud of.
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show, Andrew. It's so great to be here. Okay. Biggest, best, most proud business moment. That's the question, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. I think I'm going to go with this one. So, tiny bit of a backstory so people get it and connect the dots a little bit. The fast version is my first career, I was a high school teacher. I left the teaching profession when we had our daughter, Brighton. She's now 14. She's barely 14. She turned 14 in September of 2024. And that I think some people would think, oh, like leaving your teaching profession and starting a business could be the biggest one. But I don't think that one was the biggest one for me. So I left teaching. I started a coaching business. I did that for about 2.5 years. And then I had a mentor who kind of talked me into coming and working for her. And that was an absolutely incredible experience. And at the time I was looking for a mentor. I had coaches, but I was looking for a mentor, and I really wanted to find out the inner workings and all the behind the scenes of what it really took to build a multi-seven-figure coaching company online. So I worked for her. I was her director of client experience for 4 years. What does that mean? That means I wrote all the curriculum. I created all of the programs. I mean, she was a visionary for it, but I created them. I was very invested in the operations of all of our programs and also ensuring that the clients were making progress, getting results, having success, and having an incredible client experience. So I was there for 4 years, and there came a time about 2.5 years in when I just started to feel like, I haven't said this when I resigned. I feel like my soul is like in the fetal position, like dried up. And if I don't go do my own thing again, I'm never really going to get to express and experience and completely explore my own voice, my own message, my own expression. Because when you work for someone else, you have to embody their brand. And you can kind of create your own personal brand when you work for somebody else. You can especially do that in the coaching world. It's possible if they'll let you do that. But your voice and everything about you really have to eat, drink, sleep, and breathe this other person and their business and their brand in order to take it to the next level. And what you were sharing in the introduction, that was the company where I came in, and within 4 years, we went from low millions to about 10 million in 4 years. So to get to the answer to your question, I would say the moment I'm most proud of is having that conversation to resign and making the decision to go back into business and reboot the business for the second time. Because I could have stayed there. I could have easily stayed there. I could have continued to work for her, and it would have been an incredible career. But I just felt like, like I want to go in this direction. I want to be able to say these things. I want to be able to impact these people in my way, in only the way that I can. And one of the reasons why I'm so proud of that moment, Andrew, is because I was terrified to do it. It took me 6 to 9 months to muster up the courage just to have the conversation I'm exiting. And then when I did have the conversation, they kind of talked me, they talked me into staying, so I actually resigned in March. My last day wasn't until December 31st.
Dang.
Yeah. And they still try to talk me into staying longer. So it was probably that, because it really has changed, it changed the trajectory of where our lives were going as a family and where I could take a business after that.
No, it definitely takes a lot of courage. I mean, Because yeah, like it wasn't just golden handcuffs per se. Like sounds like you're passionate about the business, you cared about them. Like it was like your baby, even though they brought you on. You're like see execute it. So props to you too. And like that's so cool. Like that's such a nice compliment that you got to receive of like literally wanting to leave and then be like, no, please stay, please stay, and like getting you to stay longer.
Sure.
So that speaks a lot to like how valuable and how amazing your skill sets are. And so here you are, top of the mountain, obviously starting your own new venture. But tell us what are some of the embarrassing moments or failures you kind of experienced either with that old company or with the new venture you're starting. We're curious about that as well.
Embarrassing moments are failures. So, I'll tell you when I came back into my business in 2017, I rebooted it, relaunched it in January. It was January 2nd, 2017. Now, remember, I had a coaching business before I worked for my mentor. I had a coaching business. I grew that first business locally. I grew it doing the networking circuit, the speaking circuit in the state of North Carolina, and I started my own meetup groups. So I grew like very locally. When I came back into business in 2017, I did everything online. So the second time around, I grew my entire business inside of a Facebook group. Now looking back, I feel it's interesting. I think a lot of people feel this way, but I feel it kind of embarrassed looking back on this. I was terrified to have a presence on social media on my personal pages. And that's actually one of the reasons why I started a Facebook group initially. Now, I knew the power of community, so it was partially a strategic decision. Start a Facebook group, build a whole business inside of a Facebook group, right? Like all roads point to the Facebook group. And for me now, it still does, right? But for probably the first year to year and a half, I did not show up on video at all outside of that Facebook group. I was so afraid of what my mentor, my past employer, I was so afraid of what they were going to think about me. I was so afraid of being judged. When I kind of unpacked what was really going on, I had been in the industry for about 7 years. So when I started that Facebook group in 2017, I grew my business very, very quickly. I wasn't a spring chicken. I was not, I was starting over from scratch, but I had been in the industry for 7 years. So people knew who I was. But there was this thing about me that was so afraid to not work with somebody who already had a relationship with me. I was so afraid of that. I was so afraid that I was going to do something wrong, or people weren't going to like me, or what if I couldn't get them results? So now they're going to be mad at me. And then what does that mean? The whole thing. So I really hid out. I used that Facebook group to literally like take off and build my business very fast. But if I'm being honest, I really used it as a place to hide. I call it hiding in plain sight. And again, I was just so afraid to say certain things on my personal page, to speak on video. I could do it all day long inside of my group, but on my personal page, no. And, part of it was, well, what are people who know me going to think? And then the other part of it was, oh my gosh, like, what if I attract strangers? What if I attract strangers and strangers want to work with me and they don't really know who I am?
Yeah.
I don't really know them. And, so I don't know, I probably could have made double the amount of money that I made that first year had I not been so afraid. So it wasn't necessarily embarrassing in the moment, but when I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, like how silly is that? But I also, Andrew, I think that's also really common. I don't think I'm the only one who feels that way sometimes. Like I'm afraid to say what I really want to say and be who I really am out here, so I'm just going to go create this little community and hide behind a wall. I think a lot of people do that.
Interesting. And that's, yeah, it's, brings up a very good point of just like being okay, like constantly showing people on your personal profile and your professional profile, like what you do and how you help people, and like show like there are multiple assets of who we are as a person. Like we're not just online course creator. Like we also like riding bikes. We also like climbing mountains, and it's okay to talk about both things because it's like people like working with the whole picture per se. So, and so it sounds like yes, your biggest mistake and failure was essentially not promoting yourself on your personal brand enough, essentially. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, basically like hiding and not being visible.
Yeah.
Because when, for anybody building a business, visibility Like your degree of willingness to be visible is to the degree that your business is going to grow. Because
Yeah.
you have to be visible to attract strangers, leads, prospects, clients, for people to understand who you are, know who you are, get to know, like, trust you, all those things. Visibility really is the gateway. If you're not visible, there's no business, especially if you have a personal brand.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, so that is curious though, because you have something called the invisible marketing method. So I am curious about this now because you're like, oh, be visible, but also my program's called Invisible. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so that's a methodology that I developed called the Invisible Marketing Framework System Method, call it whatever you want. So what that really is about is, providing such an incredible client experience for your client, your paying clients, that your paying client, they're successful, they're getting results, they're having an incredible experience. And let me unpack that just a little bit, because there is a difference between clients being successful, getting results, and having an awesome experience. There are a lot of clients in programs who are getting results and who, by all intents and purposes, they are successful. However, they did not enjoy their experience. And then you got vice versa. You have people who love the experience because maybe you do a really good job with community, or maybe you're like really pouring into people personally. But did they get a tangible result? If we were going to track their progress and their success, were they really successful? Did they get the result that you're promising them? So, it could go both ways. If you can put all that together, your clients are successful and they're getting results and they're having a 9 or 10 out of 10 satisfactory level experience. And it really does have to be a 9 or a 10. Once people start rating you lower than a 10, the likelihood of them staying or referring someone goes drastically down. So we want to see 9s and 10s if you're going to ask that question on a survey. You really want to see 10s. 9s are okay. So that invisible marketing machine, it's your existing clients who have such an incredible experience that you don't even have to ask them, and they're going to go out and they're going to sing your praises. They're going to make social media posts about you, about your events, about the success they're getting, about a call that you ran, a training call that you ran, whatever it is. They're going to go and they're going to share about it. They're going to post about it. They're going to go tell their friends about you. They're going to bring people to free events that you might be hosting. They're going to be bringing referrals in. So your clients, that's your paying clients, that's really who becomes this invisible marketing machine out there. It's almost like an invisible marketing army. Now you can have a formal affiliate program. You can have a formal, I like to call it a brand ambassador program, where your clients are bringing referrals in. You're basically paying them a commission to bring referrals in. You can absolutely have an organized affiliate or brand ambassador program for your existing clients. But the whole invisible marketing machine, it is about your paying clients becoming almost like this. They're linking arms and they're this marketing, again, like a marketing army, a marketing machine that's out there doing a lot of the work for you and then bringing people in. But that doesn't happen because you want people to go promote you. It doesn't happen because you just ask people to promote you or expect. You've got to provide an experience and ensure that people are getting results and they're very happy with all of those things in order for them to go bring folks in.
No, it makes a lot of sense. So tell us, let's pull back the curtain a little bit. So what do people get wrong? And that's very interesting that you say some people create amazing community experiences, but they don't get results. Some people help people get results, but they don't create amazing community experiences. To me, that's fascinating because you'd think because someone had amazing results, they would want to brag about it. And if you don't get results, be like the community, why would you want to brag about that? So tell us more about pulling behind the curtain of how to make sure they have a great experience plus get results. And curious about that.
Yeah, I would say the number one thing, especially if you're if you're working with groups of people at one time, whether that's a membership, a course, a group coaching program, a mastermind, it doesn't matter. You're one to many, okay? The first thing, one of the biggest mistakes I think people are making today is they're not identifying what each individual client desires. They're not identifying what each individual client values. So if you and I, Andrew, we both join the same program, I may join for a certain reason, because there's something that I value most. You join the same program, you may join for a very different reason than I do, and you may value something different than I do. So let's say you and I both join a program that's teaching us how to start and run a podcast and generate clients from our podcast. I might value my number one core value in that program, or reason why I'm joining may be I want to get paying clients. So you better make sure you're going to help me do all this, but you better teach me a strategy to make sure I'm getting clients from the podcast. Mm-hmm. You may find value in the community. You want to start a podcast. Yeah, you want to get clients from, yes, of course. Maybe, but that might be like 2 or 3 on your list. You may actually be joining because you want to be surrounded by a lot of other people who are starting a podcast as well, and you really value community. So it's important that you're identifying and understanding right out of the gate, as soon as your clients are joining, find out what they really value. I'll share some personal examples of me being a client. I was a client in somewhat like 2 different programs at 2 different times with someone. They have an 8-figure business, so they're doing something right, okay? Now, one of the reasons why I personally join group programs in the business category, like a business coaching program, is because I know myself really well. Number one, I do well when the program is very structured and there's a structured process for me to follow. Number 2, I do really well when I have, certain benchmarks to meet and the program is tracking improvement and progress, not just the end result, because my brain just wants to focus on the end result and I'm not valuable until I'm getting the end result, which we know doesn't work. Third, I do exceptionally well when I am with a group of people and I see the people doing even more than I'm doing, or they're operating at a level 10 that I thought was my level 10, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm operating at a level 3. I need to step it up to a level 10 because if he can do it or she can do it, I can do it too. So that's typically why I will join a group, which means that community is really important for me. So back to these 2 programs that I've joined in the past from someone, same person, that was the missing piece for me. There were people in the program, there are people in the Facebook group, there are people on the Zoom squares when we have calls, but nobody's really getting to know each other. I wasn't getting to know each other. There's no breakout rooms on the Zoom calls. There's nothing that's bringing people together except we're all on a Zoom call once a week for 60 minutes. That's not community. And community is something that has to be facilitated. And I share that example because I didn't renew in those programs. And the reason I didn't renew isn't because I didn't get a result. It's because I value community. And it's one of my top 2 reasons why I will even join a mastermind or a group program. And if community isn't facilitated and you don't find out that's what I want, then you just lost me. So that's super critical to know about your people. And I do get some pushback on things like this because a lot of folks want to scale their group coaching program or their mastermind. And the thought is, well, if I have 500 people in my program, how on earth am I going to be able to, lead people differently in this unique way? And the answer is you can do that. And you also need support behind the scenes. I think something that you'll resonate with what I'm about to say, because you and I both love kids and high school students and have worked with kids. I was a high school teacher before I started a business. Mm-hmm. And I taught an elective, which meant I had all age levels and all grades in one class. I could have the smartest kid in the school, and I could have the kid who doesn't want to be there, who sleeps through every single class, doesn't get fed breakfast, and saw domestic violence the night before.
Jeez, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You have to find out as a teacher, if you're good, you have to find out within seconds how every single kid needs to be spoken to, how they need to be led, how they need to be taught, but you're still teaching them all the same exact curriculum. They're all still taking the same tests. They're all still taking the same test at the end of the year. So what I would do is I would stand at my front door of my classroom, and my classroom was at the end of the hallway, and my door faced the hallway. So I could stand in my doorway and I could look down the hallway, and I would use the time that my students were walking down the hallway to observe them. So I would observe their body language. I would observe their eyes. I would observe how they interacted with other people coming down the hallway. I would observe if they were like running in when the bell was ringing. I would observe when they walked into I would observe how they interacted with me at the door. And then
Hmm.
I would observe them walking into the classroom, and I would pay attention to what they would do between me and getting to their seat and how they would handle, do the bell ringer that's on the board. So you have to figure out like, how do I have to speak to this person? How do I get the best and the most out of each one of my students? And that's where I learned how to do this. It was on the fly in the classroom. And I think what we're forgetting as coaches running group programs is you've got to build a lot of skills. You have to have teaching skills, you've got to have facilitation skills, leadership skills, and coaching skills. And you've got to know how to dance between those. And I think that's one of the biggest missing pieces from the coaching industry with scalable programs is people only have one of those skills. Or quite frankly, a lot of people just have a marketing skill and they're just sharing with people how to do marketing. But you really do have to run your program like a classroom, like a teacher would run a classroom. And you've got to figure out, how do I motivate this person? How do I inspire this person? How do I change my instruction for this person? And you might need a team to help you deliver on that as well. And I'm not going to lie, it's not cheap to do. It's an expense for clients to have incredible results.
Yeah, so you brought up I'm just trying to think about so like obviously, okay, if you have 10, maybe 20 students in your program, like okay, yeah, it's easy to have like more one-on-one touch points and have like more breakout rooms and things like that, and get a better sense of like maybe you do like pre-surveys of like, oh, what they're looking for, what would be a good experience for them. But yeah, like you said, once you get to like 50, 100, like 500 students, like how the heck do you quote unquote view that classroom experience and personalize it enough to have them feel like as the leader you're overseeing them? So I'm curious about more of that.
Yeah, you have to have a team. You have to have a team, and I call it the client success department, which is kind of apparently a new term for the coaching industry. That terminology was developed by SaaS companies and technology companies in the 90s. So if you look at any SaaS company or technology companies, software, they all have a client success department. And they have a very large client success department, and a lot of money is spent on the client success department. You'd think that in the coaching industry, obviously, look, I get it. Business is here. We're all here to make money. And if your business isn't making money and you don't have revenue in first position, you're going to be out of business very fast. But we want to have revenue in first position, and we want to have client success in first position, right? So if those are the two things in first position, how would you be running your company? So it requires team. You have to have team. And look, depending on who your team member is and what they could juggle. I mean, when I worked for the company I worked for as director of client experience, we would have anywhere from 200 to 300 students at a time, and it was just me back there.
Whoa! Oh my gosh! Gosh!
But I knew I had the skill to do that though, and I didn't get any training on how to do that from the employer. But I have a master's degree in teaching. I taught in the classroom. I also taught online for 5 years. So I knew how to manage that. I did eventually have a certification team because we had a certification program, and I needed people to help with the certification of that. I couldn't do all of that. But you've got to have team. You've got to have whatever you want to call it, client concierge or member success managers or member success director. And you've got to then figure out how many clients can a client concierge handle. I was chatting with a COO of a company the other day. They have about 450 students, and they only have one person in client success that's like their member specialist. And he said it was way too much for them. And so they're looking to hire a second person and possibly a third, because really someone should only have about 100 people on their caseload, depending on what it is that you're selling, depending on, there's a lot of variables that go into that. But you've got to have people assigned to your people who are checking in with them. And look, a lot of this can also be automated. So it doesn't all have to be human and manual. But the other thing I will say is you also have to be very discerning. The promise and results that you are saying in your marketing and sales messaging, whatever it is you're saying people are going to be able to achieve back here, Is there a certain point where you have too many clients where you can't actually deliver on that with excellence in good conscience? I've had a coach that, stopped scaling a particular program. I don't know at how many people. I don't know if it was 80 people, 100 people, or I'm not quite sure what the number was. But she came to that decision. She was like, wait, once we were seeing we're getting to a certain number of people, once it goes over that, if I can't ethically deliver on what I'm selling at the same level of excellence as when we had 10 or 20, then we've got to cap this here. And that is someone who actually had a pretty robust team behind the scenes, and you were getting one-on-one support from coaches behind the scenes. So, there's a lot of variables and factors that go into it. But at the end of the day, you've got to have automation and you've got to have team who are supporting people. And let me make this distinction, because there's a lot of confusion around client success and customer support. Those are two very different things. Customer support is reactive, and they are putting out fires and solving problems. Client success is 100% proactive. Those people are in a position that is designed to help your clients take action, make progress, see improvement, and get results and have a great experience. That's not the role of an executive assistant, a virtual assistant, a marketer, or customer support.
Interesting. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, success is proactive versus reactive customer support. So you kept bringing up the automation thing. Obviously, AI is all the buzz these days, and it's going to continue to be the buzz. But I know automation's been around a lot longer than AI per se. So yeah, tell us more when you say you can just use automation to help with all this customer and client success as well.
Yeah, and it's not going to do 100% of it for you, but like I love simplicity. I don't like to do anything complicated or too complex. But what can you automate? One of the big mistakes that I see people running scalable programs is they don't really have a true onboarding process in place. What most people think is onboarding is a single welcome email or a single 30 to 60 minute group call with everybody who just joined, letting the clients know about all the logistics and everything they have access to. Nothing about that is onboarding, by the way. That might be a moment in time that's a part of your onboarding, but that's not onboarding. So how can we make that more robust using automation? Well, one very simple way is you can have a series of text messages that go out. You could have a series of emails that go out, and not just onboarding, but that could be ongoing. So let's just talk about, onboarding. There's actually 7 different phases, psychological phases, that your clients are going through just in onboarding that you have to address. Number 1, you've got to deliver on what you sold. That can be done in an email, by the way. They need to get access to what they just purchased very quickly. The second one is trust. How are you building trust? Introducing your team to people. All that could be automated too. I mean, you could automate videos, you could automate audios, you could automate texts, you could automate emails. Then you've got to overcome their objections. Once they become a client, you've got to overcome their misconceptions. You've got to show them how simple your process is. You've got to show them how to get quick wins. And then you've also got to show them social proof of current clients that are getting results in the program. That's a communication sequence that can be delivered in whatever medium you desire. You could send a gift in the mail. You could send an email. It could be a telephone call. It could be a video. It could be snail mail. But all of that could be pre-set up inside of a system where those pieces of communication are getting delivered, on certain days, right? So it really can be that simple. So that's a form of automation. Drip feeding people your content. When new clients come in, one of the worst things to do is give people access to everything in the portal, all the lessons, all the modules. That's easy to automate. So there's nothing complicated about it. How can we simplify this so that our clients are set up for success? And not just like, what is success? I think oftentimes we're thinking like end result, end result, end result. No, your clients should be getting quick wins, all along the way, and we should be celebrating that. So it's thinking, what do my clients need to see and what do they need to hear so that they're celebrating the small wins and they're celebrating the steps that they're taking that are going to lead to those results.
No, that definitely makes sense. Of just like, creating all these client wins and how do we stack up against each other. I was gonna ask about, so when you're talking about the onboarding process, you're like, it's not enough to do like a welcome email and then invite them to a call. So yeah, you're talking about like an onboarding process should have multiple emails. Sounds like in a perfect world should have someone individually reaching out to them as well, rather than have them go through the onboarding process. But yeah, so I'm curious, like, yeah, what should an onboarding process look like for a program that has 20 people versus a program that has 500 people, or should that be similar? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I'll unpack just onboarding in general first.
Yeah.
So think about onboarding in a different way than we're thinking about onboarding. Again, how a lot of people are looking at onboarding is it's a one moment in time, and once that one moment in time is done, like, we're moving on. Look at onboarding like an entire event. It has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end. When does onboarding end? Technically, onboarding should not end until your clients have gotten a result. So what is the result that you want your clients to get? I'd say depending on, there's no like standard, to your question, like if I have 20 people or I have 500, or is it a 3-month program, a 6-month program, a 12-month program? Is it a group coaching program, or is it a mastermind? So there isn't like one set way to do this or one right way to do this. There are principles that apply to all of that. So there's so many variables at play here depending on what it is that you're delivering. But what is the first, I would say, like, what's that first win or first result or first small little series of quick wins that your clients need to get in order for them to be successful the rest of your program? Like, what do they have to also wrap their minds around? What do they have to be on board with? What kind of your system or your methodology do you have to indoctrinate them into? Which, I don't know. Is that going to take you a day? Is that going to take you a week? Is it going to take you 2 weeks? Is it going to take you 30 days? Is it going to take you 3 months? If you look at the SaaS industry, sometimes onboarding could take 3 to 6 months. It's just the nature of what it is that they're offering. In coaching programs, it could take a day, it could take a couple of days, it could take a few weeks. The other thing to remember is not every single one of your clients are going to be on the same pace. So Andrew might get a result faster than I do. So Andrew might actually get through onboarding in 2 weeks, but it takes Megan 4 weeks to get through onboarding. Maybe Megan was just a little slower. Maybe she wasn't as engaged. Maybe she just didn't quite get it. Maybe she had a lot of resistance and some mindset stuff going on, so she wasn't actually taking the action to get that first win. And maybe Andrew was just like, I'm going for it, whatever, like, I'm getting through onboarding fast. So that's the other thing that we really have to be paying attention to. Are our clients actually getting through onboarding? Here's another tip I want to share that I've never heard anybody talk about. We all know when we run group coaching programs, people stop engaging and they stop participating. And you'll see the first pretty significant fall off of your clients about 90 days in, because that's human nature. So here's a tip for everybody when it comes to onboarding and keeping your clients engaged. Make a list of clients who haven't shown up to a call in a few weeks. They haven't been in your community. They haven't been engaging. You have like no idea what's going on with them. Gather them all together and re-onboard them. Literally take them through the onboarding process all over again, because you can reignite them and re-engage them and kind of bring them back to life. And this is so important when it comes to retention. I always tell people, onboarding, this is how important. I mean, I could teach a whole program on onboarding. Onboarding will make or break your retention. Because your clients are deciding between day 0 and day 90 of being in your program if they're going to buy again or buy something else from you. They're figuring it out that fast. It can happen day 0. And that doesn't mean they're doing a chargeback or asking for their money back or not showing up. They could go through your whole entire program. But most people are not waiting until the very end to make that decision. They're deciding during your onboarding process. So it's just so key what we're getting them through that process. And again, the nature of your program is going to help you make the decision on what do I need to walk my clients through so I am setting them up for success. Here's the other thing we forget in our programs, and especially during onboarding. It is not our job to, go do that work and take the action for the client to get them the result. But it is our job to walk the horse to the water and do our best to make them drink. Well, how do we do that? It is our responsibility to set up the most fertile environment possible for our clients to be successful in our program. And there's a mentality that I've seen since 2011, since I've been in this industry, where it's like, well, you're an adult. You knew what you were doing when you swiped the credit card. You know you have to take action. Here's all my stuff. Like, just go do it. And I'm sorry, but that doesn't work for a 5-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 25-year-old, or a 42-year-old. It's why I just joined a coaching program 4 weeks ago. It's the guy's not teaching me anything I don't already know. So why am I joining it? It's because I need the accountability, the structure, the community, and I need somebody to redirect me ever so slightly when I am veering off path, right?
Yeah.
So we do have to create that environment for our clients to be as successful as possible. And don't give up on your clients unless they're literally like abusing you and abusing the other people in the program.
No, that makes sense. So yeah, as someone else who's run a few programs, have been in a few programs, what I've noticed, I love what you're talking about too. Like, the onboarding is an ongoing process, and I think that's such a golden nugget that people are missing out on. Is thinking, onboarding means you do a welcome call, send a welcome email, and boom, onboarding's done. But I like what you're saying. Be like, no, like, the onboarding is continual. Just like the program shouldn't be like, all right, here's the program, good luck. Like, the program's kind of continual too. So I know it's a huge issue in the coaching industry and online course industry too, that people sign up for programs and courses and then they fall off the face of the earth and you never hear from them again. And so I'm curious, like, do you have any recommended methods to go about messaging people to reconnect with them? Because, a lot of them probably feel shame and guilt about not doing any work and like not responding, or like they feel too embarrassed to respond. And so how do you help get a larger response rate when you want to re-engage them and re-onboard them, kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a really good point that you're making, because in coaching programs, what I've noticed happens is exactly what you just said. And it's that people feel embarrassed and humiliated. And if you watch, someone will be engaged for X amount of time, and then all of a sudden they stop showing up. And the first thing you want to do is reach out to them. Now, what I have seen behind the scenes in a lot of programs and people who I consult is this mentality. Again, it goes back to what I just said. They're an adult. I'm not going to drag people through the mud. I'm not going to coddle. I'm not going to handhold. This is the big one. They're just not an ideal client. Mm-hmm. Oh, really? Are you sure about that? Are you sure they're not an ideal client? That is such a lazy way of leading people through a program, to just assume, oh, they're just not an ideal client. No, you just don't want to do the work. Like, let's be honest. So what most people are doing, whether it's the team or it's the business owner, they're letting the person disengage for too long. That's the problem. Because I could sit here and give you every strategy under the sun, but if you've waited too long to try to implement them, it is going to be very difficult, if not almost impossible, to bring that person back. So I would create some sort of checklist or SOP. Hey, when we've noticed that a client has missed a call for, whatever it is, 1 week or 2 weeks, but I would not let it go past 2 weeks, or they haven't been in the community like Facebook group or wherever your community, school or wherever, circle. They haven't made a post or they haven't commented in 2 weeks. Almost create a scorecard. Like, create a scorecard for yourself. These are the 5 actions or behaviors, habits, that lets us know this client is in good standing. And somebody on your team needs to be tracking every single client and writing down, or in a spreadsheet somewhere, filling out that scorecard every single week. When I was an online teacher, I worked for North Carolina Virtual Public Schools. If we had a student that was at a grade of an 80 for 2 weeks, we were required to pick up the phone and call home. So if their grade dipped down to an 80 and it stayed at an 80 for 2 weeks, I had to pick up the phone and call.
80 out of 100?
And I would have about 100 students at a time.
No, I mean, like, when you say grade of 80, like, is that like getting a B?
80 out of 100.
But I feel like that's pretty
Um,
good in school.
in North Carolina, that's a C.
Oh,
But
really? An
it,
80 is a C in
yes,
North Carolina.
yes, I
Interesting.
know.
Oh,
In
okay.
Florida, it's a B. In North Carolina, it's a C. A
Okay.
C was at 84 or below. That was a C in North
What's their
Carolina.
scale out of 110 or 120 or something? I mean, feels like
Out of
most things.
100.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. All
Out of
right.
100. So,
Yeah.
but that was like the benchmark. They're below an 80 for 2 weeks. You have to pick up the phone and call.
They're a
We need
C
to be
student.
doing this
Yeah.
in our coaching program. You don't see somebody for 2 weeks. They haven't come to a call in 2 weeks. You haven't seen them in the Facebook group for 2 weeks. You can track if people are in your portal watching lessons. They haven't watched a lesson for 2 weeks. All of a sudden, pick the phone up. Pick the
Yeah.
phone up. Because here's what a lot of coaches do. They wait until it's time for people to renew. And then they pick up the phone and they try to get people to renew. And if you want to piss your clients off more than anything, it's ignore them when they have disengaged. Look, I get it. They made a conscious decision to disengage,
Yeah.
but they are watching to see if you are going to reach out to them. And it's not like any of them are, consciously saying, I'm going to disengage just to see if this person reach out. Nobody's thinking that.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, I promise they are noticing that. They are noticing if you just let them drift away. I call these people drifters.
Yeah.
The drifters will go a couple of weeks and you make them feel so bad when you could not give a care in the world to pick up the phone and call them. Don't just message them, pick up the phone and call them. Leave them a voicemail, send them a text, whatever you keep calling them. I mean, call them 10 times
Wow.
and direct message them on Facebook, see if you can get them on Instagram. And you're just trying to re-engage and support them. And usually what you'll find when people disengage, I found this out when I worked as a director of client success. It was never really the program that was causing them to disengage, and it wasn't really the lack of results. I would find out it was something happening in their personal life. They were either having marital problems, or their kids were having problems at school, or they were having to take care of a parent, or they themselves were diagnosed with some sort of disease, or they were in the hospital. Like, it's usually some sort of personal turmoil that people are going through that usually has nothing to do with your program and what you're teaching people. But life takes people out of the game more than anything. And typically that person has no other lifeline and nobody else to talk about, but they just disengage because life happens. But if you could be the person who's reaching out and holding their hand and bringing them back in, because typically what they need the most is to be surrounded by like-minded people and to be in community. And I believe that's our responsibility. I mean, we've got to do our part with that.
But yeah, and that, yeah, because I definitely believe that could definitely help solve a lot of problems. And that is, as someone who's taken a lot of coaching programs, like as a client, like you want to feel like the program owner or creator really cares about you and like it really will go above and beyond, like see you succeed and support you rather than say, all right, see you in the weekly calls, good luck kind of thing. And so I agree, like it would be a great feeling if you were disengaged for 1 or 2 weeks and they would personally message you like, hey, it's checking in. But that brings into the next question too, like the saying by Jim Rohn, you can have excuses, you can have results, you can't have both. So how do you, when you're connecting with these people, they're like, oh, sorry, like I've been struggling at work or struggling at home. How do you navigate what excuses count versus don't count and like how to interact with those? So I'm curious about all that.
Yeah. I think a lot of that goes back to the onboarding process and also keeping our systems, our processes, and our methodology and the information that we're giving people. It has to be so simple. It's got to be very simple. Even if you're working with highly advanced people, you still have to keep it basic. You still have to keep it simple. You still have to keep it, even the communication, almost like very childlike. And the other part of this, so that's number one. And this is all like in the beginning. It's all about the start. It's all about the beginning because we can prevent a lot of this from happening if we would have a better start. So that's number one. Number two is recognize that your program should be like 10 to 20% information, 80 to 90% helping them, like getting them to go out and take action.
Wow.
Because the learning and the education is not coming from our modules, our videos, or us sitting on a 60-minute Zoom call teaching. That is not where education comes from. And it's certainly not where results comes from. Where does education and results come from? is when we as the client, I mean, again, I'm in a coaching program right now. I have watched every single video in the portal, and they're awesome, and they're short. They're like under 10 minutes. There's only a few that were 30 minutes because they needed to be. I've watched everything. He is not giving me any like step-by-step strategy. He's not like, I'll give an example. One of the things that he's having us do is host an in-person meetup, that's how I built my first business. That's like one part of the methodology, like host an in-person meetup. Do I want to do it? No, my mind is saying like, oh my gosh, like nobody's going to come. Where are you going to host it? What are you going to say? Da, 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 da. He does not give you any script. There's no like outline of how you should host it. There's no outline of how you should invite people. He's just like, go host a meetup tomorrow. Like literally just go host a meetup tomorrow. But like, that's what we have to do to get our clients to take action. Yeah. Because if we're teaching too much information, what you're doing is you're feeding your clients so many roadblocks, so many potential mindset roadblocks. Because if he really did give me an outline for the talk, exactly how to move to the sale, like if he had like laid everything out, I mean, he could have a whole course on how to host in-person meetings. There could be a whole 8-week course on that. Had he done that, my mind would have been like, but what if I do it wrong? What if I don't do it right? But this, what about that? What about this? And so you're literally feeding your clients like this runway to just stack up all the reasons and all the excuses why I am not going to do the thing you're telling me to do that's going to give me the result that I'm wanting. And so I think we've got to like shred back the amount of information we're giving people, and we've got to teach them that the result comes because you're taking very imperfect, very messy, not right, be right 40% of the time action. And then the third thing, which I think you actually said this at the beginning of our call, it's celebrating and recognizing right out of the gate very, very small wins, behaviors and habits that are actually going to lead to the final result. So I'm going to host a meetup, but I might not close a sale. I might not make any money from that. But the fact that I, number one, scheduled it, number two, wrote a post about it, number three, I'm booking a place for it, like that's 3 wins right there.
Yeah.
So my community and my coach, they need to celebrate those 3 wins, not only celebrate Megan if she makes a sale at the end of her meetup. Why? Because if that's the only thing that's celebrated and I do it and 2 people show up and I don't make a sale, guess what I feel like? A failure. Guess what I do? I stop showing up to the calls. Guess what I do? I stop asking my coach for help. Guess how I feel? Embarrassed and humiliated, and wonder what all these other people are going to think about me who did a meetup and had 22 people there and made 2 sales.
Yeah.
We're setting our clients up for failure because of the way we're running things and how we're communicating. If we could switch that, it would change the game for our clients and for our bottom line.
No, it makes sense. And and that's like, it's interesting to think about too, of just like telling people just to take action versus like saying, okay, here's how to host a meetup, like find a venue, like reach out to at least 20 people, like put an agenda together. Like, so it's interesting that you think it should just be like host a meetup, go, and that's it.
Yeah. And so guess what? I went. Now yeah. I delayed it by about 2 weeks. From the time I saw that video and that like action, I have delayed it for 2 weeks. And then finally I was like, because he even said, he goes, if you're the person who doesn't want to do this and it's very uncomfortable for you, it's the thing that you need to go do. And so what we've got to be teaching our clients, I actually wrote a post about this yesterday on my Facebook page. I wrote about dopamine. I interviewed somebody on a podcast and we started talking about dopamine. And this same conversation came up, but just in a different way. And she was saying how so many of us are wired to get dopamine hits, but only from the final result, only from like the big result. Like I made the $1 million or I got the 10 clients or whatever. And so she said, you've got to actually train yourself to get dopamine hits from the activities and actions that eventually will lead to the result, which you can stack all day long. Yeah. You can stack all day long, you know, following up with somebody, making a post, recording a podcast, booking a place for a meetup, like all of that is dopamine hits all day long, and it builds your confidence as you go. And then you just kind of have this mindset of very future thinking. and like really trusting that it's going to happen versus shame and guilt, which comes from thinking of the past. But again, it's more of a mindset game for our clients. So we've got to understand psychology and how people are wired to then know how to deliver the programs and how to set it up such that the number one goal for us is our clients have to take the action we're asking them to take. But if they knew how to set that environment up for themselves, they already would have. So again, we're the ones who have to set that environment up for them such that they are set up for the most possible, success and potential.
Totally. No, that makes sense. Well, and just kind of drive this point home too, like, so going back to like accountability when you're reaching out to clients who might have been a drifter and drifted away, and obviously maybe everything is situational, but maybe there is just like a general template to keep in mind. Like if someone's like, oh yeah, sorry, I want to be involved, but I was getting too busy at work and it was taking all my time, versus like, oh sorry, I want to be involved, but my family member, I have to take care of them now, kind of thing. Like from an accountability perspective, like how do you handle like people's excuses, I guess is the question.
Yeah, I would re-enroll them. And what I mean by that is go back to the same types of questions that you ask in the original sales conversation, right? Because in a sales conversation, we don't want to be the one telling the client or convincing the client. We want to ask questions where they are, and we don't want to convince the client. We want to ask questions that allow them to convince themselves. So you've got to do the same thing all over again. You almost treat it like, I know they're a paying client, but treat it like I'm having a sales call with this person for the first time all over again. And you can literally ask the same questions that you asked before. Like, what's the number one thing that you want? What's the number one thing that you need? What have you been trying what's not working for you right now? Stuff like that. I could keep going down. Actually, let me just pull it up really quick because I did a sales conversation earlier today and I've got it right in front of me. So this will be cool for people. Like, what's the number one thing you need right now? What's the number thing you want right now? What's your biggest fear about your fill in the blank? I would ask business because I'm helping people with their business. What's your number one biggest fear about your business? What do you deeply desire about your business? What have you been trying in the past? Why is it not working? What do you hate the most? So you're literally just re-enrolling them into letting them convince themselves that this is what they really want. And look, if something has changed and it's genuinely like not a good fit, then you've got to figure out what to do with that. But re-enroll them, get them to. I think what we try to do too much, I think there's a lot of, and we don't realize we're doing it. I think we go to this place of almost like shaming and guilting people into what they've done wrong and shaming and guilting them into coming back. But that's us convincing them. So ask questions and let them convince themselves they want to come back.
No, it makes sense. No, I love that. All right, well, I know we're coming up on time here, so just have a few questions left. Yeah, first, is there anything that you wish I've asked you by now, but haven't gotten a chance to ask you yet?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I mean, we could sit here and talk about it for like days.
I know, seriously, yeah. Yeah.
I think the thing that I want to say, well, I guess the thing I think is intriguing is like, what's the difference between people who are, just getting started or like are trying to scale their business versus people who are making like 8 figures? Because I have experience working with people from, I'm making no money in a business. My largest client does 45 million a year. Not currently. I don't currently work with them now, but earlier this year and last year, they were a client. And I've worked with everything in between. And there is this illusion that people who make a lot of money or have built a big business really fast, or even if they didn't build it really fast, they're just special, they're unique, they have a different set of problems. It's like they're just this specimen and it's natural. And after working with a lot of people at a lot of different levels, I'm here to tell you it's no different at that level. What those people struggle with who are making $45 million a year, they struggle with the exact same things as someone who's just getting started struggles with. They have the exact same problems. There's just more money at stake. and there's a larger team at stake. But it's the same stuff. What they think is their problem, everybody thinks is their problem. Everybody thinks they have a marketing problem. So I don't care how much money anybody's making. Everybody thinks their biggest problem is marketing, and their biggest solution it's marketing. It's always that. We just need more leads. We just need to put more money into generating more leads. It doesn't matter what their real problem is. Everybody thinks that. It's a lot of the same mindset issues. The difference between people who are just getting started-ish or early stage versus the ones making 45 million, again, there's just more money at stake. So there's a bigger fear that I'm just going to lose everything. I'm going to lose the money, versus the person who's getting started. It's like, I'm afraid I'm not going to make the sale to get the money that I need to pay the bill. But it's on the same spectrum. But I'm telling you. And then the last thing I'll say about that is, I think there's also this illusion about what you're supposed to be doing in your business to sustain it and continue to grow it to the next level. And what we see with people under $1 million and why they never get to like 500K or $1 million and then beyond. The people who are getting to the beyond, they just kept doing the basics because the basics is the answer. And the basics are the answer when you start, and the basics are still the answer at 45 million. And a really good analogy for this, my brother was a professional baseball player. My brother was groomed to be a professional baseball player from the age of 5. And in the off season, he would come home. We had an indoor batting cage in our backyard, and he would give lessons. He was a catcher. So he would give hitting lessons and he would give catching lessons. And he would have parents of kids that were middle school and high school aged. And they would say, I'm paying you all this money, and you are teaching my kid the same thing that he was taught how to do when he was 7 years old. And my brother would say, ma'am, sir, what do you think we do in the big leagues at practice? Yeah. And he goes, I do the same practice that I did when I was 7 years old. I do the same drills as a 25-year-old professional baseball player as I did when I was 7. So why do the professional athletes get to the professional level? They just did the basics more often and more consistently and perfected the basics. Yep. They're doing nothing different at that level. And that's where we think like we're going to graduate into doing things in like there's some other way to do it. It's the basics. It will always be the basics. That is the answer.
No, and for those listening too, the Dodgers just won the World Series against the Yankees, and the Yankees were ahead like 5-1 in the 5th inning, and then the Dodgers didn't follow the basics, and they let a bunch of runs go in because they weren't following the basics of the fundamentals. So even at the World Series level, like basics still matter. So love that analogy too. Well, all right, we have 3 questions left. One of them is, what do you believe are the non-negotiable actions as an entrepreneur to be successful?
Okay, I'm just going to repeat what I just said. The basics.
Oh, okay.
And never stop doing the basics, and do the basics consistently 5 days a week minimum.
Love that.
Forever. Like as long as you're going to have a business, do the basics.
No, 100%. And then also, how can people best contact you, connect with you, get a hold of you? Let us know how to best go about that.
Yeah, 2 places. So number 1, I have a podcast. It's called the Built to Last Show. So that is a great resource. Lots of awesome interviews over there. I think you're going to be on my show coming up pretty soon in the next few weeks. And then my kind of like hub spot where I build community is in my Facebook group. And that is called Structured Freedom, Inc., Client Acquisition for High Ticket Coaches.
Love it. Yes, thank you. Yeah, definitely connect with Megan on those platforms. And then tell us, Megan, what's the one takeaway you want people to have from this interview today?
Oh my gosh, I'm just gonna be a broken record. It really is like just focus on the basics, master the basics, do the basics better than anybody else. I mean, seriously, do the basics better than anybody else. And focus forward. Focus on your future. Don't think about the past because that's where shame and guilt comes from. It comes because we're focusing on the past. Just have a one-track mind for the future and just commit to mastering the basics better than anybody else.
I love that. Well, thank you again, Megan. This has been so awesome. I took like a full page of notes myself, and hopefully for those listening in, like Megan's advice will help you to grow and scale your courses and programs and make them much better than other people's programs, which makes you help stand out. So thank you again for coming on today, and we'll see you all next week for the next episode. So thanks, everyone.